I think that binds anarchists together is, and this is stolen from Marx, but I'm going to change it because anarchists, I really do believe, borrow a lot from Marxism, and they should, because Marx has one of the most brilliant books is Capital, and you should read it. It's never a better time than right now. One of Marx's phrases about what he understood a communistic economy to look like, and most Marxists actually don't even spend much time with this, but I still love this one. He talks about an economy where it's from each according to their need, to each according to their need. From each according to their need, you give what, and to each according to their need. And I think within anarchism that we would say from each according to their need and desire to each according to their need and desire based on what's available again.
Excuse me, isn't it from each according to their ability?
Ability, sorry, you're right. From each according to their ability. Sorry, thanks. From each according to their ability to each according to their need. And I would be from each according to their abilities and desires still, to each according to their need and desires. Thanks. And based on what's available. If we are having a drought, we might decide together that we have to think about a way to deal with water because my desire to have water might not work in that situation. So we might also sometimes have to take into consideration that we can't always have what we need and desire, and that we would do that together in a humane, respectful, decent way. But for me, I think this again binds a lot of anarchists, is that we don't just look at what people need, but we look at what people also are excited about and desire and hope for and what they want to do with their lives, not what they just are capable of. And that's a really different way of understanding not just economics, but all of life. And I'm not just trying to apply this again to economics. And from that, I think there's a lovely thing which comes out of that within anarchism that really also binds anarchists together, that there's an emphasis on spontaneity, on play, on pleasure, on joy, on happiness. Why are we wanting a better world? Is it so everybody can be pushed down to a sort of sad, gray, miserable minimum level? Or is it to raise us all up so we can all experience beauty and joy and love and respect and happiness and play and spontaneity and security and safety and all the things that are these wonderful sort of positive values which sound kind of hokey in a way, but I also think they're really beautiful. It's like that's, in a sense, the goal, I think, of why we're even doing this, why people want a better world. And anarchists spend maybe too much time on play and spontaneity and joy, but sometimes there's something nice about that when that has often not been parts of revolutionary struggles or revolutionary movements. It has been put aside. We have to, comrades, be serious. We have to, and in a sense, yes, we have to be serious, but we can also laugh at the same time. We can be self-critical of ourselves, but we can experience joy in the process of getting there. Okay. And I guess that leads into the process of getting there. That anarchists understand this not far off distant time when we will leap over the barricades, topple the castle, whatever it is, and suddenly we'll be on the other side of the better society and we'll know what to do. Anarchists understand another thing I think that Marx is brilliant at from 1884 economic and philosophical manuscripts when he was really young, which is another fantastic read. And anarchists have really taken this up and done, the Situations took it up, who were not anarchists, they were Marxists, but anarchists have taken this up really in a lovely way, about understanding how the world that we've made, the world that we produce, the world that's around us, seems to be exterior to us and controls us. So we feel alienated from the world that we have made, that we created. And anarchists have broadened this out to say it's the whole of life that feels somehow that controls us, but we can bring the world back into our own making and our own creating. And we can do it now, always, as much as we can. And we know that's always going to be a partial glimpse of what we want the world to look like, and always damaged and always not quite right, but we're going to try now, because the process has to be the time when we actually put into place the things we want the world to be. That's why I use the word prefigurative. It is now that we are doing the things that a revolution would look like. And I want to have a lovely little quote. I was listening to some music on the way down here by Ryan Harvey. He does folk, ride folk, good music. It was an old tape that I had and I threw my stuff. And it's a woman's voice on the song, so I'm quoting someone I don't know. But she talks about how revolution is not a cataclysmic moment. It's an endless succession of surprises zigzagging to a more decent society. And I just kind of love that. That was really nice. We don't even know what half the time we think what we're doing is going to be about freedom ends up looking really strange. Then we're like, whoa, and then something surprises us, and that's actually what we meant to be doing. And so I love that she talks about we're trying things, we're surprised by them, we keep doing it, and it's not a straight linear progress. We're just getting to be in more and more sort of decent world, and we're doing that now. I thought that was such a lovely sort of little song definition of how we get to the process itself right now. So the last 4 or 5 things I want to talk about within anarchism is, so how do we do that? How do we start taking these things that I think very broadly brings all anarchists together, and how we think we can move from this critique of the world to a reconstructive vision of the world to starting to do it and what we want that to look like. So anarchists have a large, I think by and large, have a huge emphasis on what it would look like to have voluntary association with mutual aid. Voluntary association meaning we do things because we want to do them, not because we're compelled to do them. I love being part of the anarchist bookstore, Black Sheep Books, which I'm part of in Vermont. Doesn't look like an anarchist bookstore when you walk in. It's bright and light and friendly. We have books of Marxism, we have literature, we have poetry, we have all sorts of categories of books that most anarchist bookstores don't. Some do, but we don't have books that aren't radical. We kind of want to just create a space for dialogue. But I like people come in, they're like, oh, bookstore, oh, anarchism, oh, queer section, oh, anti-racist, huh? And they're like, huh? And they're like, oh, a bookstore. And then I always love that moment where you're like, well, we're actually not a store. And then none of us get paid. And people are always like, well, why would you do this? And I love that question. Because it's so interesting, it's so sad that people would ask you why you do something without getting paid. Why you would do something like that without getting paid is sort of sad. Because it speaks to why they have to do what they do, and they don't like what they have to do, and they have to do it. And most of us have to do things we don't like a lot of parts of our life. But what I like is that moment where you can start talking about someone about, wow, there's a lot of people who choose to try to do huge parts of their life or all their life because they want to do that. They do these projects because it's what they care about out of passion. And we still might need to figure out how to do it to get food or how to get housing or healthcare or all these things we need. And we'd figure out a different way that looks different than capitalism. And there might be some things we all have to do that we don't like. So I want to just amend the voluntary association with mutual aid and cooperation because none of us may want to do the dishes in a better society or take out the garbage or deal with things, that we don't, other things we don't necessarily want to do. But because we've chosen to try to make more and more of our life what we want it to be, we would also, I hope, choose to figure out better and better ways together. We could also voluntarily associate to do the things that none of us really wants to do and actually try to make it as fun as we can, or as useful as we can, or as desirable as we can. But that's a really huge thing, that we choose to do things because they make our lives better. And we do it in a way that's thinking mutualistically with each other. A sense of helping each other out, aiding each other out, cooperating. And I think those two things end up being bound together as a principle again. We make choices about what we want to do, but we do it because we also want to do it with each other. Help each other out in solidarity, cooperation, mutual aid. And that they're actually sort of two sides of a relationship that we'd see in a different form of social organization. When you get down to the practice of anarchism, that doesn't always happen. There's some anarchists that believe everything should be about voluntary association, and when it's not working their way, they're gone. There are other people that tend to be like everything should be about the mutual aid, and they want people to stick with it no matter how horrible it is. And in a sense, I think, again, it's like, how do we reconcile those two things? Is how long do you stay with something that you're voluntarily associating with when the times get tough? Because they always get tough. How long do you stick in with your collective until you think we need to disband? And some of the most beautiful moments for me as an anarchist have been being parts of collective projects that have had to make choices to stop because it wasn't working. As the collective, as the space, and us having humane, wonderful, voluntary conversations about how we are going to stop something is just as important as us having the same conversations about how we want to start something. And I think that's why I want to put those two together. The next way I think anarchists try to bring principles into a practice is trying to come up with other categories that seem like they could potentially be at odds. So a lot of anarchists talk about both decentralism and globalism, localism and globalism, which could be completely at odds most of the time. The self and society, the specific and the universal, unity and diversity. We could come up with hosts of things, the country and the city. And in a sense, what we try to do is take things that seemingly are at odds and think about how we can bring them together in sort of a sense of, again, bringing them together that doesn't destroy the city or destroy the non-city, but bring them together in a way that make them seem more in harmony with each other and yet allow for the difference. A bunch of us were, Matt Hearn, who's speaking here at the book fair on democratic radical, or he's speaking on something else here, but he spoke at my bookstore the other day on democratic radical urbanism. And he talked about interesting ways where he lives in Vancouver, where they're trying to integrate the city and the country into a city, and he actually was trying to make the argument that cities are the most ecological places, much more than non-citified places, but that it's a matter of making them feel more integrated. And so how do we do that, knowing that there's going to be trade-offs and dissonances and disagreements? And that's what I think anarchists try to do all the time, is try to walk this line about trying to make both work all the time. And I think that's actually exactly the project.